Alright, what's up y'all, it's LakerFan here. As y'all can see by the title of today's video, we're here to talk about every build's weakness in NBA 2K21. Now last year we did this exact same video but with different context. So for instance, in last year's video it was PLAYSHARP, its weakness is a playlock. Playlock's weakness is another playlock, and you guys know last year playlocks was super OP. Now the same thing goes for this year. PlaySharps and pure locks are super OP. You would have just seen every build's weakness being pure locks and PlaySharps, so we're not doing it that way this time. Instead what we're going to do is list the 1 or 2 traits that are the worst thing about the build and talk about what its actual weakness is described. So I hope y'all enjoy the video. If you do, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on the noties, all that good stuff. Let's try these 1 to 1K likes in the first 24 hours. And without further ado, we're gonna get right into this. Now this one right here, you guys can see by the caption, there really are not many weaknesses when it comes to the PlaySharp. We're talking around 6'5", even 6'1", man. The interior defense, it makes no sense how good of interior D these builds can play, and you would think that'd be its one weakness. Now I will say, perimeter defense is very hard to play in this game. The sliding and stuff like that, it's horrible mechanics, and even locks can't do that well with it. So with the PlaySharps, they struggle even more to guard stuff like that, but their speed is their saving grace when it comes to the perimeter defense. Again, if interior D worked properly in this game, that would be their one weakness, because that's by far the lowest rating that they have, including the block and rebounding and stuff like that. You could say the rebounding is the weakness of this build, but it's not needed to do that much. So realistically, you guys know the deal. If you upgrade driving dunk with this, you don't even need finishing badge points to dunk well. Then you have the crazy playmaking and shooting ability with the ball handling, three-pointer, the playmaking badges, the shooting badges, all types of stuff like that. And then you can still get around 8 to 9 defensive badges, or even 10 if you go low on the finishing. So like we said, we all know PlaySharp has very few weaknesses. And another build that has very few weaknesses is going to be the pure lock right here. So this one obviously cannot shoot at all. Doesn't matter if you put your shooting badges on, put all your ratings into the shooting stuff, max your three-pointer out, get like 4 shooting badges. It's not going to matter. You can't shoot with this build. I know some people think they can, but they're just different breeds, all right? And realistically, they'll probably shoot like 40% from 3 at best. And then when it comes to the taller versions of these, so we're talking the pure rims, the paint beast, stuff like that, 6'10 plus, mobility becomes the problem. I'm talking speed, vertical, even sometimes the strength is something that's hard to balance with this pie chart. But now let's get to some builds that actually do have some weaknesses. So right here we have the Playlock 2K20 champ right here. This thing was undefeated as far as like its weaknesses. This thing had 0. I mean, it could shoot, get contact dunks, speed boost, have Hall of Fame dimer, floor general, play crazy defense, play all types of interior D, perimeter D, didn't matter. This build could literally do everything. 2K21, very, very different. It really got nerfed as far as its driving ability goes. And the major obvious reason this build's been nerfed is this right here, inconsistent shooting. Now, this build lived on the fact that it could shoot with a low three-pointer last year. People had to play it super high because it flat out would shoot greens every single time you leave them wide open. And then as soon as you play them high, they run right past you, get easy dunks, hop step their way into the paint. You guys know the deal. Every single time it's going to be like that. But with the shooting inconsistencies this year, it becomes that much harder for you to just play like that, because now you're forced to paint match a little bit more. Or if people leave you wide open, you're not just going to bang every single jump shot. And like I said, the contact dunks did get nerfed on this build. You have to be 99 overall on the dot to have the contact dunks and be shorter than 6'7" to have them. Last year you could be 6'8" and still have contact dunks at 99.9 overall. And that's part of what nerfed this build, as well as the fact that we don't have the 99.9 anymore. It's just the capped out at 99 overall, and it only goes +4. Next, we have the Slash Sharp, aka the BP build. Obviously, defense is going to struggle with this one. So, whenever you make a build like this, you're likely going to go all in on your finishing, shooting, and playmaking, have super minimal defense. I'm talking just perimeter defense and lateral quickness. Likely, that's what you're going to do. Or, if you don't do that, the reason on the right here is going to become a thing where you have not much ability to be well-rounded. You have to go, like, it's really hard to drop anything off your finishing, anything off your shooting, or anything off your playmaking and still have some sort of defensive badges. Really, you're going to lack one area super bad no matter what you do with this build. It's just the nature of creating the build. But in general, this new patch where all you need is 80 ball control to have the pro dribble moves, this build is low-key kind of back. I'm not going to lie, this is actually pretty viable now, because before that, it was going to be really hard to get 85 ball control with this build. But it is definitely achievable now, around even 6'5", to have 80 ball control with this build, and you can still get the pro dribble moves. So now we got the pure sharp. The obvious weakness to this build is going to be the physicals. We're talking speed, strength, acceleration, and vertical. Worst physical pie chart in the entire game, but it comes with its pros. We obviously know this is the best build as far as the three-point rating and shooting badges, but the question then becomes, what's the point of even making a pure sharp when you can just make a play sharp and have like 5 less shooting badges and 4 less three-pointer, yet way better physicals as far as the speed goes, way better playmaking badges and ball handling, stuff like that, and it just comes with so many more perks. The pure sharp, it's become quite irrelevant in this game, but as far as being a big man, it actually is pretty useful at the sake that it's really hard to have good three-pointer unless you're a pure stretch. So we're talking anything above 6'8". Pure greens are actually pretty solid, but the one weakness as far as building the build, as far as your pie chart and like filling out the badges, is going to become either you have to decide between defense or finishing. Generally, I would say to go with defense on this build, just because obviously the reason of, you know, you're going to be a pure shooter. You don't need to get to the hoop. It's about as simple as that. If you're going in, honestly, you might as well just be wide open. I'm gonna just put it like that. And this build does not function as a ball handler all that well. It's more just as a big man and spot up, if you will, or just like a wrap guy who's going to move around off ball. Just generally, you're not going to want to do anything with the ball in your hand with this build, and it's more so seen as like a post scorer hybrid where you're going to do post fades and just, you know, run around off ball, catch and shoot, stuff like that. So now we got the pure blue. I want to explain what's written on this slide right here as far as the one-dimensional and weak defense compared to locks. This is talking about the undersized slashers, so we're talking anywhere from like 6'5" to say 6'9", where you don't really have, it's not the post score pure blue that we all think of. I'll talk about that in a sec. I didn't write any slide out for that, but I'll just explain it after. But like I said, one-dimensional, you got no game to your offense besides, you know, like getting to the hoop and just dunking. You don't have any shooting in this. If you put shooting on this build, I would definitely not recommend it, because that means you're either really lacking in one of these areas that you definitely need. You're going to want your playmaking badges, that's for sure. You're going to want the quick first step, unpluckable, probably post spin technician if you're anything around like 6'8" or taller. And then for the defensive badges and the defensive ratings, you're going to want all these things as well, because you're going to have to function like an inside big man. You're really going to have to overcome the fact that you don't have the highest block, interior D, steal, lateral quickness, defensive rebound, O-board, all that stuff. And you definitely don't want to take anything away from the finishing unless it's close shot like I did with my pure slash, but either way. And then as far as the post scores, obviously the one major weakness is going to be mobility. You can't really play any backside help defense as a big man. And then really there's not too much weakness other than the fact that you can't shoot, but who cares if you can't shoot when you're 7'3"? All you're going to be doing is post hooking over everybody's head. And we all know how dominant the 7'3" pure blues are in this game. That's just a given. So now we got the play slash play, whatever you want to call it. Either way, whenever you make this build, it's going to lack defense every single time. Now, some people, maybe if you just come to the fact that you can't shoot with this build, you're just not going to upgrade shooting and put it all in defense, playmaking, and slashing, sort of on some Ben Simmons stuff, right? But I just don't think that's the way to go with this build. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know if upgrading the shooting on this build is the way to go either. But either way, we're just here to talk about the typical way of making this. We're going to upgrade playmaking, shooting, and slashing and not have much defense at all. The weakness is going to be defense, and then the other weakness is going to be speed and ball handling. Doesn't really matter if you can't shoot. Dudes are just going to sag off on you all day. They're just going to continue to sag off on you every single time until you prove to them that you can shoot. And if you can't shoot, you might as well not even be this build. You might as well be a pure blue, red blue, whatever you want to call it, or even a pure red, honestly, for that point, because honestly the slashing ability is pretty comparable to this build right here. And you just lack defense horribly on this thing. And last year, the whole like build comparison of the play slash was, why even make a play slash when you can just make a play lock and be the exact same thing, still get the contact dunks, but have way better defense and still shoot just as consistently as this build. So, I don't know. I feel like 2K's kind of slighted the play slash build every single year. I've always just seen this build as not comp in the first place. When it comes to the pie chart system from 2K20 to current gen 2K21, the yellow and blue has just been slighted in every way possible, and I don't really know how you would make this build comp in the first place. Obviously, the fact that it gets contact dunks and can speed boost is going to be a nice thing, and the one major key that's made this build a little bit more viable is the fact that 80 ball control is now all that's required to get the pro dribble moves like we talked about earlier, so that's definitely something that's going to benefit the people who make this around 6'7", 6'6" even for some of those people out there, but you get the deal. Either way, being an undersized slasher, it's not the best thing in the world. Speed boosting is obviously nice, but what does speed boosting even matter if you can't shoot? Like I said, people are just going to sag off on you all day. So now we got the pure yellow. So the one major weakness as far as this build goes, and I would just say the one thing about it, because it's not even really a weakness to the build, it's just a weakness of, like, you know, who's typically going to play on it. You really need to be a skilled shooter and a skilled dribbler to be effective on this build. So what I mean by that is, obviously, you have a little bit lower of a three-pointer, you don't have Hall of Fame shooting badges, and then if your build is all about dribbling and all about the stick skill, you're going to need to be pretty solid on it. Now, I will say this one thing about that statement, however. Dribbling in 2K21 as far as ISO goes has got to be the easiest thing I've ever seen in 2K history. Like, I'm talking the little speed boost glitch and just run right past your dude. It's so cake, but it's sort of the same thing that I was talking about with the play slash. If people just sag off on you and you can't shoot all day with this build, then what good is your speed? It doesn't even matter. So then this note right here, sort of defense. So the thing that kind of bails this build out as far as the defense goes is the physicals are great. So you could be anywhere from like, I think you can go all the way to 6'7" and still have 99 speed on this build. Or if you go 6'5" and go with the speed and vert, you're gonna have literally almost 99 speed and 99 vertical on this. So the physicals kind of bail this build out when it comes to defense, but really it's going to be a challenge to find any pie chart that's going to allow you to balance all 4 of these colors right here when it comes to the badges. So we're talking like to have 28 playmaking, 8 defense, 8 finishing, and like 13 shooting. That's literally impossible to do with this pie chart. And if it were possible, then this build would actually be probably pretty solid. But it's really hard to do that if you take anything away from playmaking, whether it's the pass accuracy, ball handling. The playmaking badge is going to dip down right away. Again, you can't even get to the point where you're going to balance these 2 things out. So really, you're either going to lack defense or finishing badges. It's one of the 2 things. So with this portion of the video, we get to the why not just be a blank instead of this current pie chart. So with this one, we're talking about the red and blue. Why not just be a pure lock? Honestly, there's nothing about this build that really stands out. The pure locks still get contact dunks. They still set just as good of screens. Really, the pure locks get way better defensive badges and defensive ratings and stuff like that. I mean, it's no comparison. Like, the defensive ratings are through the roof. Now, I kind of lied on that as far as the defensive badges go. You can still get around like 25 or 26, I think, on this build when it comes to defensive badges, but the ratings are so much better on the pure lock. And even on the pure lock, you still get literally like 97 or 98 standing dunk and like 92 driving dunk. There's really no point in making this pie chart right here, and I hate that that's the fact, because this is the build that I made last year, and I wanted to go into this year with this exact same build, but it just looks nowhere near as good as the pure lock, and that's why I decided on the pure lock myself. So now we got the red and green, whether you're talking the rim sharp from 6'8" to 7 foot or the two-way sharp from 6'5" to 6'7", the major weakness for the 6'8" to 6'7", and we're not even talking about the speed and just physicals that you lack from being tall, but shooting is a lot worse than you would expect from this build right here, whether you're like, you know, the taller, longer wingspan. And that's really what it comes down to, is because it's really hard to still have good defense on this build when you max out the wingspan, but you have to max out the wingspan to get your proper like defensive rebound, block, all types of stuff like that, and just the fact that you don't want to be a short wingspan lock or like big man. That's just not how you want to do it. Anyway, my whole point is, you make this red and green expecting you're going to be a great pick and popper, super consistent shooter, and that's just not the case. Now, the good shooters out there, like Z and all them dudes who have like the rim sharp and stuff like that, and they can bang them like 3-pointers and mid-ranges all day on the 2s. And when it comes to 3v3, you have to be banging the 3s if you have this build, or else it's completely useless. So, then we have the 6'5" to 6'7" prim lock, where a lot of people run this build, right? But the defense is a whole lot worse than you would expect from this build. Now, this is where we're here to talk about, like, the pure locks have outstanding defense, but they can't shoot. Now, if you can't shoot with the two-way sharp, you might as well be a pure lock, honestly, because then you actually have the ability to get contact dunks, have amazing defense, and then, like I said, if you can't even shoot with the two-way sharp, then why even have it? But whole point is, you definitely need to be able to shoot with this build. You should be able to do so from 6'5" to 6'7". Your 3-pointer should be fine when it comes to that. But like I said, the perimeter D is a little bit worse than you would expect. You can't really hang with the PGs, but granted, nobody can really. So, I mean, is that even something worth mentioning on this build? I don't know. So now we get into the new pie charts. The first one I'm going to talk about is the mostly finishing, some shooting. And really what we're here to talk about is the slight shooting inconsistency that comes with this build. You get the green in your pie chart, and it's going to give you pretty solid shooting badges, but you're still at a pretty low 3-point rating, and it's not the most functional when it comes to you ISOing or running point guard, and especially not running screens. Like, if you're coming out here trying to run screens with this build, not gonna be the way to go. This is definitely an ISO point guard build right here, and the other downfall to this is going to be the defense and the slight playmaking inconsistency. But the fact that they made it the 80 ball control is all you need to get the pro dribble moves. That's definitely a perk to this build. That goes for any of these slash sharp pie charts, like the full slash sharp pie chart where it's like the even split between shooting and slashing. Major W that we talked about earlier, and then with this one as well. This one is definitely benefited by that too, but the other downfall to this, if you already made this build and planned for you needing 85 ball control, we probably made some sacrifices that were needed, like lowering your wingspan and stuff like that. However, the downfall to this build is if you already made it in the first place and you planned on needing 85 ball control to be able to get the pro dribble moves, you probably made some changes that you shouldn't have made had they already shown you that you could get it with 80 ball control. And 2K is kind of grimy for that, man. They're super grimy for that. And so what I'm saying pretty much is you probably lowered the wingspan and stuff on this build to be able to get the 85 ball control, when really you probably wanted a little bit longer in the first place. But even at that, it's still hard to decide, because then you're dealing with the shooting inconsistencies, as you already have not too much green in your pie chart. It's already a little bit low on the 3-point rating, And then, like I was talking about, the playmaking inconsistencies, just not the playmaking level you would want from running a point guard. You're going to be lacking things like dimer and floor general, bailout, needle threader, stuff like that. Some nice playmaking badges to have if you're running PG, and especially for the ISO stuff. And who knows, they might even fix ankle breaker over the course of the year. I highly doubt it, but either way, you're going to be kind of hurt that you can't have that badge as well. Pretty much what I'm saying is it doesn't have enough playmaking badges to really be like super effective in that category, but it's still okay. And then as far as the defense goes, we all know, I mean, pretty much you're going to have to fill out the slashing, shooting, and playmaking entirely to be able to be an offensive scoring machine that you probably plan to be with this. So you're likely going to have just perimeter defense and lateral quickness upgraded on this build. So now we have the mostly shooting, some finishing. I honestly think this is my least favorite pie chart in the entire game. Like, why even have this amount of slashing in your build when you have no contact dunks? There's literally no point in making this at all. I think this is honestly the worst pie chart in the entire game. And really, like I say right here, less playmaking than you'd want from your point guard. It's the same thing with the other build with the mostly slash, some shooting, but at least the mostly slash has a little bit better ball handling ability, still a little bit more playmaking badges too. And then you're going to deal with the same exact problem on this build as the other one, where you have probably very minimal defense. And like I said, there's literally no point in making this pie chart. I feel honestly, I feel bad, and I might be offending anybody who made this just because they thought they'd want to go with something original like this. But again, literally 0 point making this. So now for the final two. This is where they're really not the worst pie charts ever. They're definitely not the best though, I will say that. But really, when it comes to these splits, it's like, why not just make, a PlaySharp with the even split so you could have the Hall of Fame playmaking badges. And on top of that, you barely get anything as far as the boost for your shooting badge amount, your 3-point rating when it comes to these pie charts and stuff like that. Like, so pretty much the one weakness to this is why not just make a PlaySharp? It's the best build in the game, really, and it's, very similar to what you're making right here, so you're likely going to want that. And then for this one right here, why not just make a two-way sharp? Why not just, cut off this extra defense and just put it in your shooting? Because you're already sliding yourself. You're already ending up with no Hall of Fame shooting badges and lower three-pointer and stuff like that. You're barely getting any better for the defensive attributes of the defensive badges. And honestly, people who made this pie chart were probably the people who were expecting something like 2K20 shooting, where everybody was gonna be able to shoot, and you're like, I don't even need Hall of Fame shooting badges. I know there were some people out there. I was even saying in my top 5 lockdown build before the game came out, do not get baited by this pie chart, because I bet you the shooting is gonna be harder, and it definitely was. So anyway, that's all for the video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, feel free to drop a like, sub if you're new, turn on them noties, all that good stuff. Let's try to get 1 to 1K likes in the first 24 hours, as I said in the intro. And if you want to leave any feedback as far as what you think your favorite build's weakness is, or the one that you run, feel free to leave that in the comments. And if you made it to the end of the video, put build in the comments as well to show your support you made all the way through. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed. Take it easy, man. Peace.